Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. I'm your instructor Joy. Let me first play a tune for you. So this was an excerpt from Mendelssohn Violin Concerto first movement, where we start doing this fancy bow stroke, something called Ricochet. So in this video we're going to talk about this Ricochet. I made other videos about the technique of Ricochet, but today we're going to talk about the 4 common mistakes that I see in my teaching studio. But before I go into that, I'd like to thank you all for your continued support, kind questions, comments, sending me donations, booking lessons with me. I really appreciate. So I also encourage you to check out my Patreon page, which you can find in the description below. Now, when it comes to Ricochet, it's nothing but we're using the physics of wanting to bounce of the bow stick. When you see the bow stick, it's not quite straight, but rather curved downwards like that. So when you just throw the bow, it kind of bounces on its own. And then we're using that one as one of the fancy stroke. In this case, we're doing all 4 strings. So maybe I go a little far. Yeah. Sorry. So here, the most important one, and often we forget, the common mistake number 1. Holding the grips too firmly. Here it's very important because we want to allow the bow to bounce. If we're holding each finger joint quite firmly, we're actually preventing the bow from bouncing. So remember, when we're using the index finger to apply more weight to keep the bow on the string, and the opposite we have to allow. So of course at the beginning we have to hit the bow stick a bit with a wrist movement and giving a little accent with the index finger. But once you're done, we have to be able to let go. Yeah? Yeah. So the common mistake that I see is you're holding it firmly, trying to put it down. So that's common mistake number 1. Common mistake number 2, the elbow height. So now in this case, we're doing not single string but all 4 string. Not because it's a Ricochet, but when you're doing multiple string crossings like that, the elbow height has to be adjusted. So elbow starts a bit high, and it get gradually lower, and reverse happens. This is important to keep the right elbow height no matter what bow stroke you have, but especially when you're doing Ricochet, which you have to work with the bow, you have to be even more precise, even more well organized with keeping the right height. Because if you keep your elbow just high, just like for G string, the bow, it just gonna bounce too much on E string. Or reverse, if you keep your elbow too low, you might be able to start at the beginning, but bow is gonna just stop bouncing. Yeah. So here we need to keep the elbow high for the G string, gradually lower it as you go to a lower string, and then vice versa. Yeah. So that's common mistake number 2. Common mistake number 3. Emphasizing too much or worrying too much on each stroke. Meaning, we're playing 4 down bows, right? But notice that I'm not doing individual down bow, or I'm not giving extra 4 down bows like this. Rather, I'm giving 1 impulse and I just lower my elbow to continue. In order to achieve that one, it's better to practice on 1 string. So you just throw the bow on, let's say, on the A string, and then see if you can feel the bow bouncing. Here, we're not trying to give extra down bows, but we just allow the bow to fall. Just give 1 impulse or 1 throw bow downwards, and then allow the bow to bounce on its own. Yeah, same thing with up bow. Now see if you can control the amount of bouncing bow stroke that you want. Let's say we want only 2. Yeah, and same thing up bow. And see if you can do this on 3. As you do, see if you can release the index finger a little more, just to make sure you're not overly holding too hard. Now let's do 4. Like that. And then once you're done, then you do the same thing. Yeah. And now, last one. Last common mistake that I see is using too much bow. At first, when we're new to Ricochet, this is such a challenging stroke because it requires a lot less of our work. We actually have to allow the bow to work for us, and that can be a little hard to grab. So now here, so at first we have to learn the physics of bouncing bow, so we use a lot of bow. But once you get used to that one, and see if you can get keep the bow a little closer to the string while keeping the bouncing bow, but see if you can use really little bow. This is especially important when you're doing multiple ricochet one after the other, or string crossings like this Mendelssohn Concerto. So if you use a lot of bow, actually the bow bounces too much. Not only that, so it's not only harder to control, but both bounces too much. Now when you do that, also pay attention where the contact point is. Contact point is where the hair is sitting. So now if the bow is sitting too close to the bridge, it's not gonna speak. Just bring a little away. Now here, understand also the degrees of hair, whether it's flat or tilted. That plays a role also when it comes to bouncing stroke. So when the hair is flat, it bounces a lot. When the hair is tilted facing us, it bounces less. So if we want to bounce a lot, we use flat hair. If we want to bounce less, we use tilted hair. Yeah. So I hope this gave you some ideas. This Ricochet is a great stroke to have mastered from intermediate to advanced player, and I encourage you to experiment yourself and see if you can make this beautiful Mendelssohn Concerto even nicer. Happy practicing. Hope to see you again. Bye bye.